I was provided this clip by one of our video editors, and I want to write some music to it. I'm going to be writing something in the style of a dark horror or sci fi genre. For this, though, I'm only going to be using Nightshade, Lotus, and Saffron, which are three of the instruments from the Scene series. Let's first listen to the finished idea, and then I'll show you how I created it. I made a few markers inside of Cubase to kind of highlight the different points of this clip that I want the music to emphasize. Really, the first thing I wanted to do, though, was give a voice to that vortex that we see here on screen. I first started by going to Saffron and started listening to a couple presets. I stumbled upon this one called Chaos Tronic, which I felt was very fitting. It really seems like there's something chaotic happening. If I play a higher key, the motion's a little bit faster versus a lower key, which makes it a little bit slower. Let's record in this first sound. I next want to layer an atmospheric sound using Nightshade. This will help transition between cuts and not just be the metallic blip that we recorded. Using the XY pad in the center, I can morph between the two different sound sources and different effects parameters. What's also cool though is that aftertouch is enabled for this instrument. I can go to the settings here and pressing harder on the keys is actually going to be pitching down this sound. I'm going to shorten these MIDI clips a little bit and then copy them over to another point in this clip where we see this vortex. The next section is the space station at the beginning. I imagine this deep hum that you might hear if you were inside. This preset has a cool aftertouch effect where it's essentially adding more distortion. This is super helpful as I could just press harder on the keys and give this sound more movement forward. Since the sound from Saffron occupies the lower frequency range, I want something that's a little bit higher. I want to emphasize the moment we first see a person on screen. You're looking at this cool shot of space, and I want you to feel startled by this close-up shot. Morphing the XY pad quickly creates this fast and sharp movement with the sound. In the effects section, I can swap out which effects are being used. I can choose different things like reverb or modulation type effects. Since the moment that we see the person isn't perfectly on a grid, I'm just going to slide over this MIDI note so it hits right on beat. I always like using pulsating bass notes to move the scene forward, and I'll use Scene Lotus for that. I'm going to first dial in the sound. To give it more movement, I'm going to be using Replica. Another thing that I want to highlight is when the person wipes her visor. She looks stressed, and I want a sound to reflect that. The sound itself adds tension, but to add even more, I'm going to play a tritone. In this case, it's C and F sharp, which is one of the most dissonant chords in music. Using the aftertouch function, I can also then have this sound pitch down the harder I press on the keys. I'm just going to edit the automation here a little bit just to make sure that the pitch down effect is as smooth as possible. At this point, we see flashing red lights, which makes it seem like something bad is happening. Just like the pulsating bass sound, I want to add a sound that's similar but in a high pitch frequency. Using the motion knob, it's essentially adding an LFO to create the movement. Using the mask knob, it's applying a filter. When the lights start flashing more quickly, this is a point where I want to highlight that things seem to be getting worse, or so we assume. To do this, I want to take the element that we just recorded and make it move twice as fast. I'll first split the MIDI clip at the point I want this sound to speed up. Then I'll bounce it as audio. I want to keep how the sound fades out, so I'll make another cut here before shortening the audio. In Cubase, I can move the endpoint of this audio, which will time stretch it. Shortening this clip in half will make the movement twice as fast. Now I'll just duplicate it, and there we go. Just like we gave a voice to the vortex, I also want to do the same thing for the person. Now, a lot of the elements that we've been creating are these atmospheric and drone sounds, so I wanted to choose something that was a little bit more melodical. Since we're dealing with space here, I obviously was inspired by Interstellar and I wanted to use a cool organ sound. I want another melodic element, so I'm going to be using Scene Nightshade and the phrase tool in Contact. There are already a handful of tool enhanced presets that are included. These combine one of the tools in Contact with a preset from Nightshade. I can also create my own. I can pick a sound from Nightshade and pick any tool and tool preset. The element preset sounds good, and I think this will work well with the phrase tool. There was a phrase preset that I found called Collapse and Restore. I like this one a lot because the notes aren't locked to a grid. As the phrase plays, it falls out of time, which I felt added a really cool feeling to the music. Since I'm writing in the key of C minor, I'm going to change the key for the phrases tool. The last thing I want to do is essentially work on the ending here. I copied over the organ part as the last clip is basically the person, the astronaut that we see. So this was kind of her voice, her sound. Now, I also then wanted to add the kind of eerie metallic sound from the vortex to make you wonder, is the danger that they're in truly over, or is this just the beginning? Now that all the elements are there and I balanced the levels of some of the sounds, let's take a listen and watch the final sketch.